Welcome to Big Hearted Indy, the Citizen 7 podcast about genuine friendship, big-hearted service, and forming whole leaders in Indianapolis. Join your hosts Greg Enas, Don Palmer, and Chris Spangle every episode as they sit down with men who are building, mentoring, serving, and leading across our city. If you want deeper friendships, a clearer sense of purpose, and practical examples of leadership shaped by service, you're in the right place.
Today we have a returning guest, Glenn McDonald, who I see in my inbox every single morning, and Andrew Hart are joining us today to talk about serving God together and their community from different vantage points. So I'm going to turn it over to Don and Greg. I'll start with Greg. Why don't you give us a little bit of a deeper introduction into Glenn and Andrew and about their friendship?
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be everyone today. Glenn and Andrew and I go way back. Don even longer with Glenn and me even longer with Andrew. And we're going to get into a bit of how those friendships were established. But in particular, we wanted the world to sort of hear about how these two men from different vantage points, each leading in the business, nonprofit, and church worlds, have come together as friends that has not only enhanced their life, but their missions that they've been called to. And I think that for me personally, that's been very inspiring to see these kinds of friendships make, and I believe it's going to be inspiring for us too. So with that, I would love for our guests, though, to introduce themselves. And Chris, tell me, should I go with age before beauty or the reverse on that?
Tough call.
Let's go with beauty.
Okay, beauty. Then I'll go with Andrew. Oh no, yeah. I'll go.
How about hair quality?
Okay. And in particular, given that Andrew is a transplant like me to this wonderful Hoosier state, and Glenn is an indigenous native of Indiana, tell us a little bit about, as you intro yourself, your journey here, and then we'll turn over to Glenn for his
journey
intro.
to Indianapolis.
Yeah,
that's
great.
Right. Yeah, let's see. Living in Charlottesville, newly married. Peyton and I were married in October of 99, and we moved here on a cold January morning in 2000. Peyton and I moved here anticipating that we'd live in Indianapolis for no more than 3 years. So that was the promise that I made to this Virginia girl who I convinced to move to the Midwest. Hang in there for 3 years, baby. And so that's been, 26 years now.
That's right.
And so came here to work at Eli Lilly and Company in a business role. And then, thanks to Greg, was introduced to the Oaks Academy and got involved at the Oaks as a volunteer initially, and then was asked to serve in an interim role in 2002. April of 2002. And so I've been in that role since. So this is now coming on 24 years.
Well, we are blessed to have you, not only the city, but even more focused with the Oaks Academy, how you've led so well, and we'll get into that. And you're a Virginia boy, too, or Washington, D.C., born and raised, too.
Yeah, asking where I'm from is always a hard question because my dad was in the Navy. And so, of course, given that he was a Navy officer, we moved around a lot. Born in California. Near an area, Greg, that I know that you have great love for, south of San Francisco, Monterey Peninsula, and then Norfolk, Long Beach, Guam, England, and finally landed in Northern Virginia,
right,
where I went to high school and college. So, and then traveled around a little bit after college.
That's great. Well, we're so glad you're here, like I said, and thank you for following the Lord's leading to serve the Oaks, and for Peyton, most importantly, to say yes. 3 years turn into hopefully 45 or 60 years.
To say yes to marrying me.
That's right. Well, that's beautiful.
Andrew, how about moving in all those different places? How did that shape you? How are you a different person because you've been in so different places growing up?
Yeah, it's interesting, Don, because I do think about that. Because Peyton stayed in one place her entire childhood. In fact, she grew up in the house that her dad grew up in Danville, Virginia. And so every 3 years we'd move until high school, where we landed in Vienna, Virginia, and where we stayed for my entire high school career. But how it shaped me, yeah, it's a good question. I think two ways come to mind. I think kind of an appetite for change, a desire for change, a restlessness. That when I met Peyton, I think it made me realize that does not always serve kind of a depth of relationships well. And so, but that's definitely shaped me. I think also it's, like a lot of people who move every few years, sort of a willingness to kind of enter into relationships, though you can anticipate that they're going to be fleeting, and to establish intimacy fairly quickly has always been something that I've enjoyed and have felt very comfortable with. And so when you move every 3 years, it's something that you can resist and keep your distance and then move on to the next place. Or you can quickly jump in and establish sort of relationships, certain momentum very quickly. And I think I would lean in that direction.
Yeah. Good, thanks.
Before heading into Glenn's intro, just tell us a little bit about the formative experience you had at Ivanwald and working on the Hill, and give the audience sort of a feel for that perspective that gave you.
Yeah, so during college and then right after college, I lived at in a group house with a bunch of guys in North Arlington, and got involved with a group there who were very committed to intentionality around following Jesus and being in relationship. And that had a very significant impact on my own personal faith and how relationships can be integral in my faith and my spiritual growth, in challenging, thinking more broadly. So the 2-3 years that I spent, living in North Arlington, working on Capitol Hill, and being very, very intentional about these relationships with other guys, I think was in some ways like a graduate school on relationships for me. And really taught me about how important it is to be in relationship with, especially with other men, and what it reveals, what it can reveal in me about my own patterns, about my own weakness, about my own sin, and how challenging it can be to maintain relationships, especially when you're very intentional and in very intimate settings, in terms of living close to one another, having meals together, working together. And it was very sharpening, the whole idea of as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. That was very true during those few years, and kind of, I think, laid a certain groundwork for me, and something that I've sought out through my adult life.
In fact, it prepared you as you met Peyton. Would you mind telling us where you first kissed your bride-to-be?
Oh, my.
The questions get more intimate after that. I mean,
because I know the answer to. I know the answer to this.
I'm glad you started with Andrew.
That's right. That's why we said beauty
there
before
should
age.
be, allowed to. Hey, I'm going to take a pass on that.
Yeah, you can. Oh, definitely. Chris edits all this, so you don't have to share that if it's. But
no, it's okay.
It's a great story.
So Peyton and I convinced her to go on a date with me. We had been seeing each other for a couple months, and I think she was getting actually a little antsy. Like, why doesn't he make a move? And I think one of my best friends, John Reardon, he was living out at a farm on the eastern shore of Maryland called, at the time, Cedar Point Farm. And he had got wind of this. And so we went out there to visit John and Margaret. Peyton and I did. And we had dinner, and we were all kind of having a glass of wine in the living room. And suddenly John and Margaret left and lit candles and sort of set up this perfect ambiance.
That was subtle.
And so that was the time and place.
Cedar Point Farm.
Yeah, you'll have to ask Peyton to make sure that's right. I'm
I
pretty
think
sure
it's
that's
right.
correct. Yeah.
So I know that point in our topography quite well on the Chesapeake
Yeah, of
Bay.
course.
So
You spent
thank you.
many days there.
I met many days there. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks, Andrew. That's great background. Glenn, we'll go to age now. But there is some beauty here. How about a little intro on your life and what brought you here?
I'm an Indianapolis kid, as is my spouse, Mary Sue. She is a member of the Vonnegut clan, so I had the opportunity to meld a couple of Indianapolis families, went to different high schools, came to Christ, both of us, as 12th graders. So it was a little bit later in our teen years that we came to grasp that there was something to live for beyond the things that were driving us up to that point. I went to Purdue. Mary Sue joined me later there. And my degree's in molecular biology, and thought that was going to be what I would be about. And by the time I'd finished my Purdue time, having spent a good portion of a year over in Switzerland with Francis Schaeffer at L'Abri, I thought, I'm going to dedicate myself to a life of the mind. I want to be an academic. Mary Sue, by the way, was more than willing to sign up to be the spouse of an academic. She thought that was pretty cool. And so off we went to Chicago, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, and trained there to be a prof. And the profs that I most respected as my time came to an end said, you know what, if you are going to be training people for church leadership, you had better go out into the field for at least 2 years. Mm-hmm. You need a couple of stories. You need to know what the grass is like out there. Get in the weeds. And then we'll be really much more enthusiastic about moving you on to the next levels. So, Andrew made this 3-year commitment to Peyton. I made a 2-year commitment to Mary Sue. I said, 24 months, honey, we're going to do a church thing, and then we're off to the next level. And she said, okay, 2 years, right? And then it's over, because she was not signing up to be the spouse of the pastor. Getting into church, I found out, wow, that was the front line. That is where the life of the mind is happening with people who aren't looking for help. Is this on a final exam? They really want to know how to live. And I was completely caught off guard by just the joy of being a church leader. And, several decades later, Mary Sue began to come around to think that was maybe that was God's will for us as a couple. I'll have to admit, it was a bit of a struggle, but a tremendous joy just to see that preparation for a certain kind of life goes right to people who are hungry for Christ. Now, the downside of this is that I really didn't have much of a vision for relationships. Mm-hmm. I was a little bit more of somebody who was going to hole up in an ivory tower. Mm. And so it was about halfway through my time at Zionsville Presbyterian Church, where I had the chance to help launch that congregation in 1983, that suddenly we together, my wife and I, realized, gosh, Glenn, you don't have a lot of deep friendships. Mm. And I realized I was exhausted. I had maxed out my calendar to stuff, and I wasn't spending time sufficiently with a few people whom I could influence and who would be more than able and willing to pour into my life to just help me thrive and survive as a man, as a leader, as a husband, as a father.
Wow, we're going to explore some of that. Well, you are a dear friend, Glenn. You've been a great friend, and Andrew was forged in this residential environment that he had, and yet you came later on with your wife telling you, hey, you need some friends. And so with that, how long were you at Zionsville Press, and where are you engaged now? Andrew's still at the Oaks Academy leading that. What are you engaged with currently?
I was at Zionsville Press, or ZPC, for 28 years, left in 2011. I spent 9 years as a workplace pastor with Ascension, the Catholic healthcare company. That's the parent company of St. V. Mm-hmm. And I retired in 2020, and in the last 5.5, 6 years, I have been mostly invested in an online ministry of encouragement called Morning Reflections.
Yes.
And it is the opportunity to really write devotionals and essays that go all the way back to that life of the mind from many, many decades ago. But give me a chance. I get to still be a pastor. I'm a digital pastor.
Yes.
And have a lot of really fun relationships with people through a stream of electrons every day.
Well, we are 4 subscribers amongst 40,000 now, 50,000?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's just thank you for those morning devotionals. And I hope Chris is going to be posting the link to that
that'd be
on
cool.
the site so that others can join in. So finally, we're going to probe how you guys came together. But Don has known you longer than me, and I wanted to have Don maybe ask a zinger kind of question that I may not be able to frame appropriately.
When did I first hold hands with Andrew?
There you go. No, if you
Well, Glenn and I knew each other from Northminster Presbyterian.
That's right.
Way back. We don't want to think of what the number is on that. But, founding ZPC was one thing, and sustaining it for 28 years is another. What did you learn about yourself, say, in year 20 that you didn't know in year 1?
Because of the nature of this particular organization, it began with 23 people and then grew over that period of time to somewhere between 2,000 and 2,300, something like that, that I was a really good leader during some of those chapters and a really incompetent, clueless leader in some of the other chapters. And interestingly, they were not sequential. So I was really good in the entrepreneurial stage and the gathering. And then as we began to get more complicated in our structure, our scaffolding of leadership, I suddenly was way beyond my level of experience or vision. So the key became for me to have sufficient discernment, and others obviously mostly had to come alongside me and say, you need to see this if you're blind to it. And that is surround myself with people who were very good at that stage of growth, while I was not. And then we'd move to another chapter, and all of a sudden I felt more comfortable again. And so it was morphing probably in those 28 years. I'm going to guess I had 6 or 7 different leadership phases. Again, some where I was successful and some where just, McDonald, please get out of the way.
And how do you think that's relevant to our listeners that are in the marketplace? Were those awarenesses something that, a self-awareness, or were there people kind of beating you over the head, say, hey, dummy?
Yeah, I was blessed to have people who felt confident and bold enough to say that to me, to say, maybe you need to, let's put you into a learning mode here where we can help you succeed better, because you're still going to be our leader. We just need to help you get to a better place. One of my favorite authors, Lewis Smedes, once said, I have been married to 5 women. And then he went on to say, and they're all the same person. And he said, my wife would immediately say she's been married to at least 5 different husbands. So with regard to your question and the relevance, I would say this is not only true in business, but in all of our relationships. We go through periods in which the needs of the moment and the needs of that person to whom we're trying to relate and care and offer blessing, they change. And so self-awareness and friendship awareness is a big deal.
And Andrew, picking up on that, what did you learn in business school or at Lilly that parlayed most importantly into your leadership at Oaks? Or maybe what didn't you learn in the corporate world that you've had to develop in your leadership currently?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because you wouldn't necessarily link a corporate business career with stepping into a leadership role at a small fledgling school. But I guess if there is one thing, it's that when I showed up at the Oaks, it became quickly apparent that I had no idea what I was doing. I had no experience leading an educational institution, no experience raising money, no experience admitting families, no experience managing historic buildings. So I think on all measures, in terms of experience, you could easily conclude that I was inept. And maybe they would have said that in my corporate job as well. I don't know. But the learning was that the absolute reliance upon others. And I see my job, certainly at the Oaks over the last 24 years, but even at Lilly, though much shorter, it required me to rely on others and trust that they care as much about the outcome as I do.
Wow.
Even though I was the so-called leader, right, that a teacher, that an instructional assistant, that admissions director, that a advancement officer, they care as much about the future of this school, just as an associate at Lilly that I might have been working with cares about the outcome, as I do. And that's there's a certain humility associated with that, that first of all, I don't have all the answers. I'm not capable of running this place myself. And then I'm reliant upon others to get it done. And furthermore, they care about it as much as I do. So that was, I think, a shared learning across both.
That is a beautiful, practical example of that. And I'm sure Glenn has had to learn that too in his leadership.
Absolutely.
And with that, what brought you two together? And we'll take that journey onward from there. How
Indian lunch buffets.
We had a mutual friend and a name known to this podcast, and that's Todd Fisher. And Todd was astute enough to recognize that when we both were, not necessarily scratching around, I think, for a close friendship, he said, I'd like to get you guys together. And if my memory is correct, it was Todd who prompted that. And
I think that's right.
Within about 20 minutes of our first time together, I realized I had exhausted all the wisdom that I could possibly give to Andrew. And we'd have to go into other ways of developing our time together, and what he just referred to when he mentioned Indian buffet.
Right.
We discovered this magical part of Indianapolis around Lafayette Square that Andrew and I call the United Nations.
Yes.
I've seen at least 36 different ethnic restaurants are in that multi-block area, and we made up our minds to take a shot at as many as we could. And over a period of time, we've had lots of different Yemeni food and Ethiopian. I had goat there, which was a real landmark experience for me in Indianapolis to eat goat. And name some others, but Indian buffet, one of our fallbacks on a regular basis.
I'm trying to remember the place, the Batman Cafe.
Yes, the Batman Grill.
What ethnicity was that? I don't remember. It was
Gotham?
like...
Yeah, it's Middle Eastern for sure.
It's definitely Middle Eastern,
Yeah, it might be Libyan.
It might, I think you're right.
So Todd Fisher, a dear friend, brought you two together.
Yep.
What, besides the cuisine and the adventure of visiting different ethnic restaurants, what started to click between you guys where you wanted to keep going?
Please.
I mean, it's just fun to be with Glenn.
Yeah.
I mean, he's witty. He is personable. He inquires about me, my life, my family, my faith, my relationships, my vocation. And I mean, I I just really enjoy spending time with Glenn. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
That's
I mean,
right.
I really enjoy when we meet for lunch. I look forward to it. I come back and tell Peyton much of what we talked about. I mean, I have to say, and I mentioned this to Glenn the other day, it is a privilege to be Glenn's friend. I've listened to Glenn. He's listened to me. We've been through kind of some tricky times in our own life, and have someone sit across the table and just listen and not provide solutions and answers, but just listen. That's typically Glenn's posture. But he's always got sort of a thoughtful, sort of humorous way to sort of think about things. He's just he's just really smart.
Yeah.
You see it in his writing each morning, how he can kind of pull together an insight from something that you would consider very pedestrian, perhaps. But it's, I think at the end of the day, it's just a joy that I really look forward to, spending time with Glenn. And it's something that has not waned for these last, 15 years since we've been meeting. It's
beautiful.
And it's something I look forward to. And it's, we don't meet frequently, every other month or so. But it's a time to kind of just level up, talk honestly about what's going on. And I always leave our time together feeling like I've really connected with a brother. And that's really, I think, very beneficial.
It almost sounds like you're spending time with a pastor, sort of an ideal pastor,
yeah,
right?
Indeed. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Agree.
That is so cool. Well, Glenn, apart from all the pain and digestion effects of some of these restaurants and being with Andrew, but what?
It is often painful.
That's right.
Yeah,
I've experienced some of those places. It's wonderful, though, wonderfully painful. But what's your take on your friendship that draws you together?
Can only echo what Andrew just said, and let's just flip the subject and the object. And I'm not sure how I lucked into. As a Calvinist, I would say, well, there's no luck here. This is the blessing of God that I am able to have and sustain a relationship with someone who is so thoughtful. What we do is we sit over our plates of falafel or whatever happens to be in front of us, and after you take the temperature of all the sports teams that are very important in our lives and land on the political headlines of the morning, then it goes to questions like, so what are you reading? And what is God doing right now in your life? Where do you think you're being led? And it's so accurate to say that not every year necessarily, but certainly every other year, each of us has had a kind of crisis or a mini concern, a pinch point of sorts in our lives, where just to hear a wise person respond and to be a listener is a beautiful thing. I think one of the discoveries, and Andrew has really helped me live this, know this, is that when you're in the presence of someone who is listening and caring, very often what happens is I end up speaking out of my own mouth the words I most needed to hear. All I needed was the setting for Andrew to be present, and he is arranging the sort of platform for the truth to emerge that I probably could never have articulated unless there was someone there who brought the words to birth. And that has happened so many times where we have been together, and you go, wow, that was the guidance I needed, and you just sort of pulled it out of me.
I wish for our whole city that relationships like you guys were replete throughout. We're missing on that. Thank you for sharing that. That really means a lot.
And I know that your listeners know or have heard recurrently from you guys that these relationships, they're not trivial. These are life-giving.
Yes.
And they're clinically more and more longitudinal studies are demonstrating that they are a matter of survival to some
Life and
degree.
death.
The Alameda County study, the most famous one on the West Coast, which went on for multiple decades and tracked myriad individuals. And at the end of this time, the health markers were most positive for people who had friendships or small groups or associations of some kind. People who smoked and ate poorly and did not exercise, as long as they had friendships, they usually were healthier than people who were living solo, which John Ortberg had the greatest line on that. He goes, "It's better to eat Twinkies with friends than to eat broccoli all by yourself."
And amen to that.
And
Yeah, on
it's
that one. All right.
That's right.
For everybody remember that.
yeah, let's sign up for those Twinkies.
That's great, Glenn.
So, there's at least one church I know of that in advertising its small group ministry, their motto, what they use to lure people in is join a group or die. That's
stark.
subtle. Yeah.
Stark.
And I would say the same thing, a focused friendship, the one that Andrew and I have been able to enjoy over time, it does give life in ways you don't see coming.
Amen.
So
Good word.
there's quite a bit of difference between your age and Andrew's age.
What do you mean by that?
What
are you
that's
getting at?
another podcast.
You look young, Glenn.
Oh, man.
You're retired. He's still in the throes of things. How does that, in terms of having things in common, you're no longer leading an organization.
Yep.
Tell us how does that affect things? How has that changed the relationship because of age or because of role?
When I really want to make a point, I say, "Look, young man." He really pays attention.
I would credit that to Glenn. I don't feel that there's any barrier there at all. I mean, we are not friends because Glenn writes a reflection that 50,000 people read, or that I lead a school. I mean, that's not why we're friends. Right. We're friends because we enjoy spending time together.
Yep.
And there's great benefit and richness in just spending time together.
Yep.
Meeting for a meal, the fun of all these different ethnicities, yes. But just kind of catching up, hearing about our families, connecting, going deep periodically, but not always, connecting, sharing our lives. I mean, that's why we meet. It's not there. I mean, and I think this is something that I really enjoy about our friendship. It feels as unforced and natural and normal and I guess authentic and maybe that's because we come from, we're at different places in our lives, but I just don't think that's a factor, Glenn. I don't know what you think. I mean, it's not something I really think about, to be honest. And like I said to Glenn or to Greg before, I honestly feel like it's a great privilege to be in a relationship with Glenn. And because I have enormous respect for Glenn, any difference that you're pointing out, Dawn, is just kind of not a factor.
Well, Glenn, you mentioned life-giving. How has this relationship actually animated your influence in your spheres of influence and impact in life? What has this relationship done to augment and amplify your work through Oaks and elsewhere, and Glenn likewise through Reflections or elsewhere that you've gone? What do you take out of those luncheons that you bring into greater impact with your calling?
On any given day, I'm not facing the concerns du jour, that Andrew has. His are just uniquely different. And I am so captured by listening to him say, okay, I've got this personnel concern. I've got this matter of what the board is saying versus what parents are saying. And to hear those, I find it very enervating, stimulating to be drawn into a completely different world. So he draws a picture of this world for me every time we're together, and allows me to step into it just a little bit, maybe to comment once or twice or here or there. It's basically just a joy to see somebody else's world, and then to be even given the opportunity to say, hey, have you ever thought of this? And what about that as a possibility? Or do you see this going this way? And I think Andrew does exactly the same thing with me. He just doesn't necessarily know it, because my life right now is not structured around hours or, W-4s.
Right. Thank you. Andrew, how about?
Yeah, I think similar. I mean, Glenn has a richness in his experiences that often is a kind of reference points, from growing a church, to, living in central Indiana for much of his life. But, you get on Glenn on various mission projects and what he saw on this mission trip to Romania or this mission trip to wherever you've been, Kenya. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, he's a master storyteller. So there's always something kind of how to think about life, friendships, travel, respective work. It's, I find that Glenn often has an interesting take that often reflects on kind of what I'm doing. So it's always valuable.
So maybe to follow up with that, both of you have had a heart for under-resourced communities. When, you're in a corporate job, I think you probably got an MBA, I assume, were you at UVA, I assume, in Charlottesville?
North Carolina.
Oh, UNC, okay. When did your heart first tilt towards under-resourced communities?
Oh gosh, Don, I think early on for me, I remember when I was in undergrad in Virginia and signing up for Big Brothers, Little Brothers, and meeting with a young man who was living in a trailer and getting to know him and his family. And I think it began to lay some seeds for something that I knew eventually I'd want to give my life to, in some form. I just had no idea what it would look like and where it would take me. But I think early, and I think with very little design. And so, I was very much on a corporate track when I met Greg and some of the founders of the Oaks, and never would have anticipated I'd spend a good chunk of my adult life working at a school. But it resonated so deeply for me, what was happening there, this vision for a school, what a school could be, how a school could bring renewal into our lives, into our families, that it kind of lit me up and made it was very clear that this is something I want to be involved in very deeply personally. So, but there is a through line from even younger than college where I felt that this is the type of work that I wanted to do. I just didn't know what it would look like.
Well, that's obvious, Andrew, with that. Thank you for sharing that backstory, because you are facing still in our city tremendous challenges, both in under-resourced socioeconomically, but lots of challenges culturally that all families are facing. What looms large in your mind where you take that passion that developed early on and continue to propels you towards seeking to solve some of the problems our city faces around developing young people into their full humanity?
Yeah, it sometimes feels a bit like Sisyphus, where you were rolling this great boulder up a hill, and right as you're at the cusp of the top, it rolls back over you, and you have to start again. I I mean, that's the unique nature of a school too. It's constantly being renewed, and more families, new families are coming and are sharing the vision or conflicting with the vision, you know, and are wanting to challenge the vision. So in my little corner of the city, and it is just a little modest corner of the city, I would say, boy, there's reason for great encouragement. I was just right before coming here, I was visiting with a prospective parent who's struggling with her son who has some severe disabilities and whether he will manage at the Oaks. And so a place like the Oaks where someone can be given hope for the future of their child, for their place in the city. I think that's kind of what gives me hope, is not this, I must say, not this grand vision of how the Oaks is changing the trajectory of our city, but meeting with this mom who sees a possible place where her son will be known and loved. Because she's really struggling with that. That's awesome. And really struggling to wonder, is there a place? And to me, that is, it's sort of the classic, Mother Teresa line of, of loving that person right in front of you and being a kind of as she would say, a pencil in the hand of God for that person, and that's how I see the Oaks. I see the Oaks, and even my work at the Oaks is and it intended to be very modest. This is a school that is as if it is serving as a pencil in hands God, so that He's writing His script in each of our lives.
Yes,
so that we might be renewed. And I think from that, wonderful things can happen, but I think it happens very modestly, with great humility, with one family, one third grader who's struggling with a disability.
Right. And Glenn, pretending we're at lunch, how do you respond to that?
I was going to say, if you had the chance to have Cuban food sitting with someone who is talking about such a vision, then you would say, sign me up.
Right.
It is truly inspiring. On my part, when you start a church in Zionsville, Indiana, you are not working with under-resourced people. You are working with people who are at the top in the corporate world, many of them in terms of the net worth that they have. And so I really began way behind in, I think, cultivating and helping others cultivate a commitment to a part of the world that, to some degree, many of the constituents at ZPC were trying to avoid, and did not, they were to be present in a place with educated folks and great resources. I grew up in evangelicalism that was very suspicious of what in the 70s was called the social gospel. And, people who would do that, they not necessarily are helping people come to the depth of discipleship with the Lord. And what a false dichotomy. But it has taken me almost my whole adult life to realize these things are not polar opposites. They are both part of the ministry and the call of Christ. And therefore, as a leader, I need to help people bridge that canyon that is so artificial. And frankly, the call to go around the world to various spots where the good news and where simple things like jobs and meals and economic support do not exist. All of a sudden you realize this is how people who love the Lord are actually, they're actually structured. They just don't know it yet. And when they first get a taste of what it's like to change the world, what you did with Opportunity International for so many years, Don, and so inspired me and, by extension, our church. That kind of work is life-changing for everybody who's in the relationship. But it took me a long time to get there.
Andrew mentioned this mom, and the Oaks being a place where she could and her child could be known and loved. Are churches known as being places where people are known and loved?
Not enough. They're known as places that some folks have got everything all worked out. And if you want to come get your life questions answered, then we're the group for you. I think that's a false image from the outside, but unfortunately there's enough truth to that people really do kind of stay away. Over the years, my ministry probably evolved or devolved into trying to reach people who I would describe as de-churched, people who were turned off by a painful experience, by something that they could not bear, by the church's failure to be loving, to be welcoming, and to say, you're not disillusioned by Jesus, are you? And almost always, no, I'm not. I want to know more about him. So how can we create a church where the compassion and the grace and the truth and the call of Christ shines through, and where the rest of us can humbly say, hey, we're keeping up with our Lord here, and we'd love for you to join us?
So I'm a business guy, a professional in the marketplace. Say I'm 40-some years old. I got a wife and kids. I like my job, but I have that sense that, and I don't feel called to go do ministry or go do it at urban. What would you? How can I still develop a heart? I live in the suburbs. I'm in a comfortable house. I'm in a comfortable suburb. I'm in a comfortable school. What would you say to us to still kind of follow the call of Christ, to love and show justice and mercy?
Start somewhere. Start small. Take an action. The heart and the mind will follow the body in this case. If you choose even a small thing, go volunteer in a food pantry a couple of times. Inquire, what are the needs in my neighborhood, on my street? Who's someone in a retirement home who needs simply someone to come and sit next to them and listen and laugh at their jokes and be present? Do something, because it tends to move us off the couch and into a place where other possibilities open up.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah.
So write down for the next few minutes what you're thankful for, and do that for the next 36 days of Lent.
Okay.
And then what? And don't do it for someone to read, or whether posthumously or currently. Just do it and say, thank you, God, for blank. And I just began that this October. Had never done it before. Mm-hmm. I always thought journaling it felt very affected to me. It felt like I was performing somehow by journaling. And so a friend suggested that I write down something each morning that I'm thankful for, and write, thank you, God, for. And it is, I actually look forward to writing this in the morning. And I find myself thinking through the day what I'm going to write tomorrow morning. And it has had an effect on my awareness of what I have been given. And so that's a
Great.
That's a modest start.
Suggestion. That's
just something that can, I think, has the potential to have quite a profound effect on the state of our heart.
That is such a great idea. And the thing is that we're sort of tempted to think that I can't really do anything unless I have this incredible global vision of some ministry that's going to be transformative on both sides of the Atlantic, and something like that, when instead it is small things done with significant care and love, thankfulness, and they begin to change our heart and then our life. It really does happen in those small ways.
So you've both traveled a lot from a ministry and been exposed to under-resourced people. What do parents and students, or just people that you've encountered from hard places, what lessons have you learned from them?
I've always been struck when accompanying mission groups to spots in the developing world that every single time the folks who have come out of the well-resourced world to go to these other spots, they always, by the end of day 2, go, I had no idea these folks were so incredibly happy and so grateful. And I'm looking and thinking, they don't have an internet connection. How can they even live? You go, they're profoundly happy because their joy is rooted in something that is going to last. And it's relationship with God, relationship with others. And I think that is the great discovery on almost every mission trip I've been part of.
I was struck reading sort of I think it was, is it Andy Crouch?
Andy Crouch.
Andy Crouch, yeah. And he was talking about the great mission field of O'Hare Airport. And walking through O'Hare, rushing to catch a flight. He decided to adopt a practice to look at each face as they rushed by him. Have you heard this before?
I have not.
And whisper to himself, the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
The image of God. There is the image of God right there. And I think for me, that practice of seeing the image of God in others is a great revelation. To see through difference, to see through race, class, geography, skill, ability, age, and adopt in my own thinking, my own mindset, disposition. There is the Imago Dei right there. And that is the great mystery of our faith that I'm hoping will continue to penetrate into my heart as I see others, no matter where they are. And so this is, I think, something that I think changes how I see people. When I'm really tethered to that idea, then my heart really does change.
Hey. Greg, you want to wrap us up?
You bet. That we're on our way with that to Indianapolis. My prayer is that we'll be the joy capital of the world. That gratitude as an expression of our faith, because that's the manifestation of real faith in the story that you believe in. And we have this, God's given us by his grace the story in Jesus Christ, to be thankful every day and to see everybody as God, as made in God's image. That's the impetus for joy. And you know what? And joy leads to works, because faith without works is dead. On the other hand, God loves a cheerful investor, a cheerful volunteer, a cheerful lover, a cheerful giver. That's the start. And you've encouraged us through your friendship and through these stories to inculcate a life of joy. And so thank you so much. With that, any closing sentence or two that either of you would like to share with our audience as we close out today?
It's related to that. This will be quick, but it's a school-related story. And so I was interacting with a brilliant academic educational academic, and someone asked him, how do you know when you walk into a school, when you walk into a classroom, that there's true learning taking place? Mm-hmm. And he said, you know that true learning is taking place when you walk into a classroom, not by standardized test scores, not by achievement levels, but you walk in and you get a palpable sense of joy in this classroom.
Nailed it.
And that's where life is being transformed.
Yes.
Not just intellectually, but through a child's full being. Mm-hmm. And I join you that this is what we should pray collectively.
Yes.
In agreement for the city of Indianapolis, that there would be a collective, palpable sense of joy in our city. It's a beautiful prayer.
Thank you, Andrew. Glenn?
And I would just say, every time I'm with Andrew, and when I walk away, go get my car, I realize that one of the things that has happened is that I want to be a better leader. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better man. And to have the privilege of being in a relationship and a friendship that sort of stokes that kind of fire. Go back to that, go back to that, go back to that, because it is life-giving.
Well, Don and I trust as we can express ourselves, that's true for all of our audience here, that we have left listening to you as better leaders, better men, better lovers. And thank you, Glenn and Andrew, for this time. Chris, I'll turn it over to you to close this out here.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of Big Hearted Indy. We're so grateful that you're here. And please check out citizen7indy.com. That's the number 7, citizen7indy.com to check out all of the different things that are going on. Sign up for the email newsletters. There's multiple events a month. We've had a Coffee and Connection this month. There's a panel on fatherhood coming up. There's the Indianapolis Clowns baseball game that sells out. And all this stuff goes quick. So you've got to sign up for the emails if you want to get notified about all the great opportunities to find some new friendship in your life at citizen7indy.com. All right, thanks so much. We'll see you again next month.